Good morning, friends. I'm very grateful to Venerable Master Jin Kong and the staff of the Pure Land College for inviting me here to talk about an interesting topic, the scientific research in reincarnation. Reincarnation is not my research field, so what I have learned in this area is still very limited. Yet, the purpose of my presentation is to trigger our thinking and discussion of this very important life phenomenon. If there is any error and mistake in my presentation, I wish you could kindly point it out. I would greatly appreciate your criticisms. Many people have some fear of disasters and death. Fear comes from lack of knowledge and understanding of the truth of life. When we know where we come from before birth and where we are going after death, our fear of death will naturally disappear. So, do we reincarnate? I'm keen to learn about life, death, and reincarnation. I have attempted to search for some articles and books published in this area and have collected some research findings that have demonstrated the existence of reincarnation. To my amazement, I found that this area had been investigated quite thoroughly in the past 4 decades in the United States and some advanced countries. The phenomenon of reincarnation becomes a remarkably interesting area in today's medical science. Without this search, I never anticipated such a fruitful achievement in the area of reincarnation research. Reincarnation as a scientific subject belongs to the field of psychiatry. Hundreds of research articles and books have been published on this subject. Many famous psychiatrists have done excellent work in this area. It is impossible to touch all angles of this emerging academic area within my 1-hour talk. Thus, I would like to share with you several renowned scholars' research findings in reincarnation. First, Dr. Rick Brown, the Vice President of the International Regression Therapy Association and a famous American psychotherapist. Second, Dr. Ian Stevenson, Professor of Psychiatry, University of Virginia, United States. And finally, Dr. Brian Weiss, the famous psychotherapist in the United States. I would like to talk about their findings in order. Hope that you will find them interesting. First of all, Dr. Rick Brown. Dr. Rick Brown is the Vice President of the International Regression Therapy Association and a distinguished American psychotherapist. He published an article entitled "The Reincarnation of James" in the June 1991 issue of the Journal of Regression Therapy. The article documents the details of an American salesman's past life memory. In this case, Bruce Kelly, a sales representative for a men's furnishing company, was required to travel extensively. However, he was terrified of flying. His fear was of being in a closed place where he had no control. When the airplane door was closed, terror overwhelmed him. Bruce suffered another phobia, fear of water. The water fears him to the extent that he even feared the water in the bathtub. Bruce had a chest pain that had bothered him for much of his adult life. Several doctors, after examining him, have found no cause for the pain and concluded that it was idiopathic. That means it was all in his mind. Dr. Brown decided to hypnotize him. Hypnosis is an effective tool to help a patient remember long-forgotten incidents. There is nothing mysterious about it. It is just a state of focused concentration. Under the instruction of a trained hypnotist, the patient's body relaxes, causing the memory to sharpen. The patient is able to properly think and talk in the hypnotic trance. In hypnosis, Mr. Kelly had a clear and vivid recall of his past life as James, a crew member aboard an American submarine. On 11th February 1942, the American submarine Shark, on which James Edward Johnston was a crew member, was deep charged and sunk by the Japanese destroyer Amasukaze. All crew members, including James, drowned. The spirit that occupied the body of James appeared to have reincarnated again on the 19th of January 1953 in the body of Bruce Kelly. Dr. Brown instructed Bruce to recall the happening of the day of his death in his past life. The patient recalled that on the 11th of February 1942, the U.S. submarine Shark was submerged in the Manila Bay, which was the home of Asiatic Fleet. He spoke in the hypnotic trance. I'm not on duty and just relaxing in the vessel. Suddenly, the vessel gets hit by a deep charge. The ship is shaking and rolling and momentarily goes black. It is a Japanese destroyer that attacked us. I'm confused and scared. How could the Japanese do this to us? I'm so mad. When I'm trying to get to my post, we are hit again, and lights go out completely. This one is a lot more severe and a direct hit. The hit definitely ripped a big hole in the vessel. Water is flooding in very fast. We are all dying. No one can survive. A minute later, the vessel is filled with water, and everyone is dead before the submarine gets to the bottom of the sea. After this hypnotic session, Dr. Brown went to the U.S. Navy Historical Center in Washington, D.C., and was able to verify Bruce's recollections as James in his past life. After this hypnotic past life regression, Bruce left all James' terror and anxiety in the submarine and was relieved of his former phobias. As we can see from this case, reincarnation proves to be real. During the life-after-life cycle, the panic that had died with James reincarnated with James. We believe that Bruce also stored his hatred toward the Japanese deeply inside his soul, because his past life had been ruthlessly destroyed by the Japanese. Feelings such as panic, anger, hatred do not disappear in one's reincarnation. So why not dispense our kindness instead of hostility to people around us? We discussed above the past life memory under hypnosis. Yet, hypnosis is not the only technique to recall one's past life memories. For instance, many traditional religions teach people to remember past lives through meditation. And some people can even recall past lives without any technique. Let me talk about a case investigated by Dr. Ian Stevenson, an emeritus professor of psychiatry at the University of Virginia in the United States. Professor Stevenson engaged in the scientific research in reincarnation in the past 40 years. By collecting more than 3,000 cases of children who, without hypnosis, remember their past lives, Dr. Ian Stevenson offers convincing scientific evidence for reincarnation. Some of these children can describe in detail what happened in their past lives. Others recognized their relatives and friends in their past lives. Some children are even able to speak their past life languages. In the deceased person, in each case, Dr. Stevenson documents the child's statements and identifies the deceased person the child remembers being, and verifies the facts of the deceased person's life that match the child's memory. He even matches the birthmarks and defects to wounds and scars on the deceased, verified by medical records. His strict research methods systematically ruled out all possible normal explanation but reincarnation for the child's memory. One of his interesting cases that I will be presenting is obtained from his famous book, 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation. The first edition of this book was published as Volume 26 of the Proceedings of American Society for Psychiatry Research in 1966. And I read his third revised edition that was published in 1992. This case investigates an Indian girl by the name of Swanlata, who vividly remembers 2 of her past lives without hypnosis. Swanlata is the daughter of Sri Mishra and was born on the 2nd of March, 1948. The family lived in Pune, India. When she was 4 years old, Swanlata was able to remember and describe her past lives. She stated that she was a member of a family of Pathak and lived in another Indian city called Ketni in her past life. Her present life's family is totally unrelated to the Pathak family. One day, when Swanlata and her father passed by the city of Ketni, Swanlata suddenly suggested that they go to her house together to have a tea. Her house was just nearby. Professor Stevenson and his fellow researchers began to investigate this case. They successfully located the Pathak family according to Swanlata's instructions. Swanlata stated that she was a mother by the name of Bia in the Pathak family. She passed away and left her husband and 2 sons in 1939. Swanlata was able to correctly recognize her husband, her sons, and other relatives in the family. Once she met the family member, she was able to state the family member's name and relationship to her. Professor Stevenson and his fellow researchers tried to present difficult tests to Swanlata. For instance, Murli, the son of Bia, tried to mislead Swanlata and for almost 24 hours insisted that he was not Bia's son, but someone else. However, Swanlata was never misled and insisted that he was her son, Murli. Swanlata also identified the room where Bia had died. And more interestingly, Swanlata revealed a secret of Bia's husband, who took her 1,200 rupees from a box in which she had kept money. No one else knew this secret, and Bia's husband later acknowledged taking the money. So be careful. Never take others' money without return, because we can never escape from our creditors. As you might have noticed, Bia passed away in 1939, but Swanlata was born in 1948. There was a 9-year difference in time. So where had she been during those 9 years? Swanlata said that after the life being Bia, she had been born into a family in Bangladesh as a girl. The girl died at the age of 9. This intermediate life exactly matched the time difference. Swanlata liked singing songs in a language totally incomprehensible to her parents, and she always performed dances together with the songs. It was as if she had learned them together and could not separate them from each other. In a visit, Professor Stevenson's colleague, who was a native of Bengal, recognized the songs as Bengali. The songs were later identified as the popular songs in a town called Sylhet in Bangladesh. And Swanlata claimed that she had learned the songs and dances from her friend during the past life when living in Sylhet, Bangladesh. Professor Stevenson has remained in touch with Swanlata. Swanlata shows no thinking disorder, but in fact is very intelligent. She has done very well in her studies. She obtained her bachelor's degree in engineering at the age of 19 and her Master of Science degree in engineering at the age of 21. She began to teach at an Indian college when she was only 23. This is only one of thousands of compelling cases collected by Professor Stevenson that verified reincarnation. Research shows that every one of us has been going through unlimited number of lives. Professor Stevenson is now a world-renowned scholar in the area of reincarnation. Several of his famous research publications are 20 cases suggestive of reincarnation. Children who remember previous lives, a question of reincarnation, and where reincarnation and biology intersect. People who are familiar with Professor Stevenson's research, including skeptics and critics, agree that these cases offer compelling proofs for reincarnation. Let me cite Dr. Harold Leaf's compliment on Professor Stevenson's research contribution in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Diseases. He said, either Dr. Stevenson is making a colossal mistake, or he will be known as Galileo of the 20th century. As we know, Galileo was an astronomer in Italy in the 17th century. He discovered the moon of Jupiter and published an unorthodox but very true statement that Earth is not the center of the universe. Unfortunately, he was cruelly burned to death by the religious authority at that time. However, Galileo's discovery seriously subverted people's views towards the universe in the 17th century. Predictably, the discovery of reincarnation will have the same, if not more, serious effect on modern science. Although Dr. Stevenson is now retired as an emeritus professor of psychiatry from the University of Virginia, he still maintains an active research agenda in the area of reincarnation. He recently published a book, Where Reincarnation and Biology Intersect, which theorizes that reincarnation may be viewed as the etiology or cause of birthmarks and birth defects. After I read this book, I sent an email to him, congratulating his accomplishment and contribution in the area of reincarnation. I also tried to relate my research area, which is finance, and asked him what implications reincarnation might have for financial investments. Professor Stevenson kindly replied to me that research findings suggest that a person's skills and abilities are usually succeeded from his past lives. This viewpoint might explain why investors, even with same trainings and experience in this life, have different earning performances. A great implication of reincarnation for finance is that people's earnings and wealth are related to their past lives' activities. Such a viewpoint actually originates in some Eastern religions, such as Buddhism, that dates back 3,000 years ago. Buddhism points out that a person's present wealth comes from his charitable works in his past lives. In general, the quality of one's present life is determined by the person's own deeds. Good deeds will be rewarded by fortune, and evil deeds will be penalized by hardship. I believe that if modern academic disciplines, including finance, were able to incorporate the fact of reincarnation, there would be a breakthrough in their respective researches. As an example, Western economics holds that competition and selfishness help create wealth. However, from the reincarnation's standpoint, wealth gained by competition and selfishness cannot be carried over to the next life. So how can one maximize one's wealth and utility over multiple lifetimes? This ought to be the real question in economics. Let me introduce you another psychiatry scholar, Dr. Brian Weiss. Dr. Brian Weiss is a famous psychotherapist in the United States. He received his medical doctor degree from Yale University in 1970. He has served as a faculty member at the University of Pittsburgh and the University of Miami. Later, he was appointed the chief of psychiatry at a large university-affiliated hospital. And he is currently chairman emeritus of psychiatry at the Mount Sinai Medical Center in Miami. Dr. Weiss has published extensively in the area of psychotherapy and reincarnation. His top-selling books include Many Lives, Many Masters, Through Time into Healing, Mirrors of Time, Using Regression for Physical, Emotional, and Spiritual Healing, etc. This case discusses one of Dr. Weiss' patients, Catherine, who was able to recall her past life's traumas that appeared to hold the key to her anxiety attacks. Catherine remembered that she had 86 reincarnations on Earth. As a traditional psychotherapist, Dr. Brian Weiss had never believed in reincarnation before and was astonished and skeptical when he discovered Catherine's past lives experiences. After careful validation, Dr. Brian Weiss confirmed the existence of reincarnation and published this case in his famous book, Many Lives, Many Masters. Dr. Weiss states in the preface of the book that every word in this book is true. Catherine worked as a laboratory technician in the hospital where Dr. Weiss was chief of psychiatry. Her religion was simple and unquestioned. She was raised to believe in traditional Catholic ideology and practices. She did not have very high education, and her mind was unsophisticated. She was not familiar with the concept of reincarnation and never believed it. At the time she met Dr. Weiss, she was only 29 and had a boyfriend whose name was Stuart. Catherine said that she was afraid of Stuart, that somehow harm would come from him. Catherine suffered panic attacks and anxiety. Her life had always been burdened with fears. She feared water, fearing choking to the extent that she could not swallow pills. She feared airplanes, feared the dark, and being closed in a narrow space. She was terrified of dying. She always had recurrent nightmares and sometimes sleepwalking episodes. Dr. Weiss decided to use hypnosis technique to help Catherine reduce her phobias and anxieties. Under Dr. Weiss' instruction, Catherine entered a deep hypnotic trance. She began to describe what she was seeing. I see wide steps leading up to a big, wide building. There are no doorways. I'm wearing a long dress. My name is Aranda. I'm 25. The year is 1863 BC. That was almost 4,000 years ago. We know that Aristotle lived 2,300 years ago, and Buddha Shakyamuni lived 3,000 years ago. Catherine continued, we live in a valley. There is no water. The area is barren, hot, and sandy. I have a girl child whose name is Callistra. She is Rachel. Rachel is presently her niece. They have always had an extremely close relationship. Such an affinity apparently had a root in their previous lives. A flood is devastating the village, Catherine went on. There are big waves knocking down trees. There is no place to run. The water is cold. I have to hold my baby tight. I drown. The water chokes me. I can't breathe. I can't swallow. Salty water. My baby is torn out of my arms. Catherine was gasping and having difficulty breathing. Dr. Weiss tried to comfort her. The disaster is over. Relax. Suddenly, her body relaxed completely, and her breath became deep and even. After this session, Catherine's fear of water gradually disappeared. In another session, Catherine entered the hypnotic trance and began to speak. I'm a boy, and my hair is blonde. Strange hair. We are somewhere in the Netherlands, around 1473. There are boats like canoes, brightly painted. We have weapons, spears, slings, bows, and arrows. It is dark. I'm afraid. My people are killing the enemies. I am not. I do not want to kill. My knife is in my hand. Suddenly, she began to gurgle and gasp for breath. Catherine reported later that an enemy fighter had grabbed her from behind, around the neck, and had slit her throat with his knife. Catherine saw the face of her killer before she died. It was Stuart. He looked different then, but she knew it was he. As I mentioned earlier, Stuart was Catherine's boyfriend in her present life. I'm floating away from my body. I have no body. I am in spirit. I'm waiting for the masters to come. Catherine continued to say. Then, abruptly, her voice became loud and husky, as if someone was speaking using Catherine's mouth. You are correct in assuming this is the proper treatment. You are correct in assuming this is the proper treatment for those in the physical state. You must eradicate the fear from their minds. It is only on the surface that troubles lie. You must help these patients reach their souls in a level very, very deep, where they no longer can feel their bodies. I want to add here that Dr. Weiss discovered that after Catherine left one lifetime, and before she entered another lifetime, she often saw or heard some spiritual beings. They spoke to Dr. Weiss through Catherine's mouth. Dr. Weiss called them the masters. These masters' speeches were full of wisdom and philosophy and could not be possibly expressed from Catherine's unsophisticated mind. Dr. Weiss taped down all the sayings of these masters and published them in a best-selling book, Messages from the Masters. Back to Catherine's hypnotic trance. The master continued to speak through Catherine's tongue. To have a body is abnormal. Only the spiritual state is natural. Spirits do not feel pain, but only happiness. This idea is analogous to the statement of Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, around 2,500 years ago in China. Lao Tzu said, "My only big worry is that I have my body." Buddhism has a similar statement. The perception that the body is self is incorrect. After these speeches, Catherine next found herself floating above her body, observing the scene below. She drifted up to the clouds, feeling perplexed and confused. Soon she felt herself being pulled into a tiny, warm space. She was about to be reborn. "Somebody who helps with the birth is holding me," she whispered slowly and dreamily. "My mother has long, dark hair and wears a funny, rough night shirt. She wants to hold me. It's the same mother I have now." You see, her previous life's mother is still her present life mother. The tie between parents and children is so close that our parents may have been taking care of us over many lifetimes. So how can we not pay our filial respect and gratitude to our parents? In one other session, Catherine remembered herself being a male airplane pilot in Germany during the World War II, fighting with the English and Americans at that time. His name was Eric. He had a wife and a lovely daughter called Margaret. The family was very happy. "I know Margaret. It's Judy," Catherine said, referring to knowing a person in the present life. Judy was Catherine's best friend. There had been an instant rapport at their first meeting, and they had become very true friends, implicitly trusting each other, knowing each other's thoughts and needs even before they were verbalized. Catherine commented in deep hypnotic trance, "I dislike war. I feel it is wrong to kill, but I must do my duty." There is a problem deep in the German government, the political structure. Dr. Weiss instructed her to progress to the end of this lifetime. Catherine said, "We are now somewhere called Alsatian in France. The English and American planes are dropping bombs near us. I'm running from the fire. Blood is everywhere. Nobody survives. I have pain in my chest, in my leg, and my neck. It's so much pain. I am dying." Catherine was in agony, but soon her breath slowed down and became very regular. Her facial muscles relaxed. "I am floating again," Catherine said. Obviously, her lifetime ended. And suddenly, Catherine's voice became deep and husky. "Life is endless. We never die. We were never really reborn." It was apparently a master's voice again. "We will all have a dominant trait in this physical state. This might be greed or it might be lust. But whatever is determined, you need to fulfill your debts to some people. Then you must overcome greed or lust in that lifetime. If you do not, when you return, you will have to carry that trait, as well as any other ones, into your next life. The burdens will become greater. With each life that you go through and you do not fulfill these debts, the next one will be harder. If you fulfill them, you will be given an easy life. So you choose what life you will have. You are responsible for the life you have. You choose it." The Master's message is akin to the cause and effect law addressed by many religions. The law of cause and effect indicates that the good is rewarded with good, and evil with evil. Several other Master's messages were also very intriguing. For example, there is a message saying, "Humankind is guided by greed and ambition, and steered by fear. In this way, it will eventually destroy itself, but nature will survive. At least the planet will." Happiness is really rooted in simplicity. The tendency to excessiveness in thought and action diminishes happiness. Religious people tell us that happiness comes from filling one's heart with love, comes from faith and hope, and comes from practicing charity and dispensing kindness. They actually are right. All beings are equal, understanding that No one is greater than another. Feel it, and practice helping another. After hearing this last message, Dr. Wise asked a question to this master. How is it that you say all are equal? Yet the obvious contradictions smack us in the face: inequalities in virtues, temperance, wealth, rights, abilities, and talents. The master's answer was a metaphor. It is as if a large diamond were to be found inside each person. But the diamond is covered with dirt. It is the job of the soul to clean the diamond until the surface is brilliant and can reflect the rainbow of colors. Everyone's diamond is perfect, not even with a flaw. The only difference is how clean the diamond is. Such a statement resembles Buddhism's utmost teaching that every being has the perfect nature. However, our wandering thoughts, attachments, and selfishness are like dirt that covers our perfect nature. Buddhas are those who have successfully removed all the dirt and manifested perfect awakening and enlightenment. Catherine reported that she had 86 reincarnations on Earth. Her reincarnations spanned millennia and the entire Earth in countries such as Italy, France, Germany, Russia, Spain, Egypt, Morocco, United States, Japan, and so on. She had been both male and female in past lives. However, most of her lifetimes were miserable. She also mentioned that she had known Dr. Wise in a previous life, where Dr. Wise had been her history and geography teacher. Details of Catherine's past lives can be found in Dr. Wise's book, Many Lives, Many Masters, and others. Dr. Wise currently maintains a private practice in Miami, where his office includes well-trained and highly experienced therapists who also use regression therapy and the techniques of spiritual psychotherapy in their work. In addition, Dr. Wise conducts national and international seminars and workshops, as well as training programs for professionals. Another famous doctor who specialized in the area of life after death and reincarnation is Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. By examining over 20,000 cases, she validated that life after death and reincarnation do exist. In most of these cases, her patients returned from death and described what had happened when their souls were out of their bodies. Her famous works include On Life After Death, On Death and Dying. Many of her works have been translated into many different languages. Other well-known psychiatrists include Dr. C.J. Dukas, Professor Gertrude Schmidler, Dr. Martin Ebon, Dr. Edith Fire, Dr. Frederick Lenz, Dr. Raymond Moody, Dr. Michael Newton, Dr. Gary Schwartz, Dr. Helen Wambush, and many others. In conclusion, massive scientific research evidence shows that human beings do reincarnate. Many significant implications emerge from this finding. First, understanding the truth of reincarnation, we will no longer fear death. Life is indeed endless. We never die. We are just constantly changing our bodies, just like changing our clothes. Secondly, these cases show that we may encounter one another in the endless life cycle. Thus, we should care for people around us and plant the seeds of love and kindness. As such, when we meet them again in the future, they will naturally be kind to us. On the contrary, if we harm a person in this lifetime, even though that person is unable to retaliate now, the anger and hatred remain in his or her soul. The anger and hatred will sooner or later turn to revenge in the present or future lifetimes. Therefore, why not embrace people we meet with love and care? According to these cases, we find that lives are filled with sufferings and afflictions. These patients' past life traumas and sufferings can still influence their present lives. As Buddha Shakyamuni stressed, the cycle of reincarnation is filled with sufferings. Nevertheless, many religions, including Buddhism and Hinduism, have addressed from different perspectives how we can improve our life quality during the reincarnation. Thus far, current scientific findings of reincarnation seem to have provided more questions than answers about life. For example, are we reincarnating only in the form of human body or in some other forms as well? What determines the life quality in our life cycle? How can we improve our life quality from one life to another? Is it possible to eradicate completely the sufferings of our reincarnation? All these questions call for the advancement of scientific research in reincarnation. Studies in reincarnation can actually be dated back thousands of years ago in many traditional religions, such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, and Catholicism. Modern science is now gradually verifying what these religions have thoroughly described. Professor Arnold Toynbee, the famous English historian and philosopher, once pointed out, the scientific progress should resort to religions. Venerable Master Jin Kong also maintained that all religious educations are teachings that explain the truth of life and the universe. If we consider religions as educations, we may want to study the religious thoughts and wisdom, which help us understand our lives better. Of course, today's research in the area of reincarnation is still premature. We believe that as science advances, we will learn more about the secrets of life and will be able to minimize or even eradicate all the sufferings in our reincarnation. Since I'm a beginner in this interesting topic, errors and mistakes cannot be avoided in my presentation. And I would greatly appreciate your comments and suggestions. Thank you very much.